Every road holds a story. What you're about to hear really happened.
I was supposed to cross the border before noon. That was the plan. A simple 2-hour bus ride, a routine passport check, and then I'd be in the next country before the afternoon storms rolled in. Except the storms didn't wait for the afternoon. They came early, and they came fast. I remember standing outside the tiny bus station that morning, staring at the sky that had turned the color of wet concrete. The air felt heavy, charged, the way it does right before the world decides to break open. A man smoking near the entrance glanced up and muttered something in the local language. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. This is going to be bad. But I had already bought my ticket. I had plans. I had a hostel booked on the other side of the border. So I told myself what every stubborn traveler tells themselves. It'll be fine. The bus arrived late, almost an hour. When the driver opened the door, a blast of cold wind pushed through the aisle, scattering dust and loose papers. People climbed in fast, heads down, as if the weather could swallow them whole. I took a seat near the back. The windows trembled with every gust. There were maybe 12 of us on board. A quiet group, solo travelers, an older couple, a mother holding her sleepy daughter. Nobody talked. Everyone just listened to the wind. The driver slammed the door shut, wiped rain off his forehead, and shouted, "Border may close soon. We try." No guarantee. That should have been my first warning. The second came 20 minutes later, when the rain turned from bad to biblical. It hammered the bus roof so loudly we couldn't hear the engine. The road narrowed as mud slid down the hillsides. Trees bent sideways, their branches whipping the windows. But the driver kept going. One hand on the wheel, one hand tightening his cap every few minutes like the storm was trying to steal it. I kept checking my phone, no signal. Just a blank screen where the map should have been. Around me, everyone had the same look in their eyes. This might get worse before it gets better. And then it did. Because just 10 minutes before the border, the bus came to a full stop. The driver stood up, wiped the fog from the windshield, and sighed. "The border is closed," he said. "Storm destroyed the road." We all looked at each other. Nobody said anything. We were stuck in the storm, on a mountain road, with no service, and no idea what would happen next. The driver opened the door, rain blowing inside like shards of ice. "Shelter," he shouted. "There is a small building. You follow me." And that was the moment everything in the story shifted. Because as we climbed out of the bus into the screaming wind, I noticed something. A figure, standing alone, near the edge of the road. He wasn't from our bus. He wasn't wearing rain gear. He wasn't even moving. He was just watching us. And something in my gut tightened. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know how long he had been there. I didn't know if he needed help, or if we needed help because of him. I only knew one thing. The storm wasn't the only thing that made my skin crawl. The rain hit my face so hard it felt like handfuls of gravel. I pulled my hood over my head and squinted toward the figure standing near the roadside. He didn't move, not even when lightning cracked across the sky. "Come on!" the driver yelled, waving us toward a squat concrete structure up the hill. "Move, move! Flood coming!" Everyone rushed ahead, heads down, backpacks bouncing, shoes slipping in the mud. Everyone except me. I looked back one more time. The man was still there, still watching, still perfectly still. For a moment I wondered if the storm was distorting my vision. But no, he was real. He was alone, and he looked lost. Or maybe something else. "Hey!" someone shouted. I turned. The French guy from 2 seats ahead was waving frantically. "You can stare later. It's flooding." That snapped me out of it. I splashed through the rising water and followed the group up the muddy incline, slipping once and nearly falling to my knees. The wind roared so loudly that even our footsteps sounded swallowed. The shelter wasn't much, just a small border outpost carved into the hillside, barely bigger than a garage. A place guards probably used on quiet days. Today, it was the only thing standing between us and the storm. The driver shoved the door open and herded us inside. The moment I stepped in, the world went quiet. No wind, no rain, just the sound of 12 frightened travelers breathing hard. The door slammed shut behind us. Water dripped from jackets and backpacks, pooling on the concrete floor. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Someone in the corner was crying softly. The driver grabbed a radio from the wall, fiddled with the knobs, and hissed, "Come on, come on." But all we heard was static. I sat down on an empty crate, still shaking from the cold. The older couple huddled together. The little girl with the mother whimpered quietly. Suddenly the French guy turned to me. "Who were you looking at out there?" he asked. "A man," I said, standing near the road. "A man." He looked confused. "Where?" "Right before the bus. Near the drop-off." He shook his head. "I didn't see anyone." I frowned. "He was right there." The mother chimed in softly. "We didn't see anyone either." I opened my mouth to argue, but then the door rattled violently. Someone screamed. The driver rushed forward and grabbed the handle with both hands. Wind pounded against the metal, rattling it so hard I could see the hinges flexing. But it wasn't just the wind. There was a shadow, pressed against the frosted glass window of the door. A figure, tall, still, unmoving, the same shape I'd seen on the road. Everyone froze. Not breathing, not blinking. The little girl whispered, "Is someone out there?" The driver's eyes narrowed. He shouted through the door, "Hello? Who is there?" The wind howled. Thunder rumbled so deeply it shook the floor. But the shadow didn't answer. It just stayed there, like it was waiting. Then as suddenly as it appeared, it slipped away, fading into the storm. The driver cursed under his breath. "Idiot! Why outside in storm? Road is gone." He looked at me. "You said you saw a man?" I nodded. He gripped the handle tighter. "Maybe he followed us." A chill climbed all the way up my spine. Not because the storm was dangerous, not because we were stranded, but because if he had followed us, it meant someone out there in that violent, impossible weather was walking toward the only shelter for miles, and they wanted in. The driver kept one hand braced on the rattling door as he peered through the fogged window. Lightning flashed, illuminating nothing but sheets of rain and swirling mud outside. "He'll get himself killed out there," the driver muttered. But there was something tight in his voice, something that didn't sound like concern. It sounded like fear. The rest of the group huddled together, whispering in a mix of languages: French, Italian, German. Everyone had the same look in their eyes. "Are we safe? Is he coming back?" I wiped the condensation off the window nearest me and tried to see outside. Nothing. Just a wall of white and gray. The storm was eating everything. The older man from the couple finally spoke up. We should let him in," he said softly. "Whoever he is." His wife grabbed his sleeve. "Walter, no, we don't know anything about him. He's alone," Walter insisted. "This storm is deadly." The French guy shook his head. "For all we know, he's the reason the border guards abandoned this place." That hadn't even occurred to me until he said it. Not a single guard, not a single official, no one waiting for us. A border station left completely empty. Even during a storm, it felt wrong. The mother holding her daughter spoke next. "I didn't see anyone when we got off the bus," she said. "Maybe your eyes played tricks on you. Storms can do that." Maybe she was right. Maybe the lightning and panic distorted everything. But deep down, I knew I had seen him. His stillness, his posture, that unblinking focus. Storm or not, people don't stand like that. The driver's radio crackled suddenly. All heads turned. He grabbed it, shook it, adjusted the antenna. "Hello? Border control? Anyone?" For a moment, just a tiny, fragile moment, a voice came through. Then another blast of static swallowed it. Whatever message it carried was gone. The driver cursed and slammed the radio down. "We wait," he said. "Storm must pass. Then rescue." "How long?" someone asked. He glanced out the window. "Could be hours. Maybe more." A heavy silence fell over the room. Hours in a concrete box, with a stranger possibly circling outside, and no idea what the road would look like afterward. I tried to focus on anything else: the leaking roof, the flickering lights, the muddy footprints on the floor. But then a loud thud hit the side of the building. Everyone jumped. The little girl covered her ears. Walter's wife gasped. Another thud followed. And another. Slow, deliberate. Not branches, not debris. Footsteps. Right outside the wall. The driver grabbed a piece of metal piping from the corner. "Nobody open door," he hissed. "Nobody talk. Nobody move." The lights flickered overhead again, once, twice, and for a second the room plunged into darkness. When they snapped back on, the thudding had stopped, but something much worse replaced it. A voice, distant, ragged, almost swallowed by the storm, calling out, over and over. Not a scream, not a cry for help, just one word, soft, steady, repeated. "Hello, hello, hello." The mother clutched her daughter tighter. The French guy backed toward the far wall. Walter crossed himself silently, and I just stood there, the rain pounding outside, the wind shaking the building, that eerie voice drifting through the storm, and I realized something. I recognized it. Not the person, not the face, but the tone. The exact same tone I'd heard earlier that day. When I walked past the man at the roadside inn, he hadn't moved a muscle. He wasn't lost. He wasn't panicking. He was waiting. And now, he had found us. The voice drifted through the storm like it wasn't affected by the wind at all. Too calm. Too even. No person caught in a deadly storm should sound that steady. Hello, hello, hello. The driver pressed his back against the door, gripping the metal pipe so tightly his knuckles turned white. Nobody breathed. Even the storm seemed to pause, like it was listening too. Then the voice moved. Not closer, not further, just sideways, sliding along the outside wall of the shelter, matching the shape of the building. The French guy whispered, "He's circling us." I felt my skin crawl. The mother whispered a prayer under her breath. Walter held his wife's hand so tightly she winced. The driver motioned for everyone to stay low. He leaned toward the window and peered out through the rain. Then he froze. "What?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't blink. He didn't even breathe. I moved closer, heart pounding, and looked over his shoulder. At first, all I saw was water, rain streaking down the glass in chaotic rivers. Then lightning illuminated the hillside, and for half a second, the world turned white. That's when I saw him, standing completely still, soaking wet, facing our window, his face blurry behind the rain, his posture identical to how I'd seen him earlier, feet planted, back straight, arms at his sides, waiting. The flash faded, darkness swallowed him again. But I knew he was still there. "Why is he just standing there?" the Italian woman whispered. The driver shook his head slowly. "He is not normal," he said. "What does that mean?" Walter asked, voice trembling. The driver only lifted a hand. Shh! Thunder cracked overhead, rattling the entire structure. Another flash lit the hillside. The man was gone. Everyone gasped. The French guy spun around. Where did he go? Nobody answered, because nobody knew. Then a soft tapping began on the back wall of the shelter. 3 taps, evenly spaced, like knuckles on concrete. Tap, tap, tap. The mother whimpered. Her daughter buried her face in her coat. The driver raised the pipe again, breathing hard. His voice shook as he whispered, "He is checking every way in." I swallowed. My throat felt dry, even in the humidity. "Why?" I whispered. The driver looked me straight in the eyes. "Because we have light," he said, "and he doesn't." Something about the way he said it made goosebumps rise along my arms. Another flash of lightning hit closer this time. The building vibrated, and then a loud slam hit the metal door so hard it bent inward. Everyone screamed. The driver stumbled back, barely catching himself. The door throbbed again, shaking violently. One more blow and it would fold. The French guy yelled, "He's trying to break in." The driver held up both hands, shouting, "Everyone back." We scrambled away from the door, slipping on wet concrete. The child sobbed now openly. Walter held his wife close. The driver braced the door with his shoulder, pipe raised like a club. Then the pounding stopped. Silence. Awful, unnatural silence. Even the storm seemed unsure what came next. We waited. Every second felt stretched heavy. Then, from the other side of the metal door, a voice. Soft, clear, the same calm tone as before. "Let me in." The driver's eyes went wide. "Don't open," he whispered. "Whatever happens." The voice repeated, slightly louder. "Let me in." A third time. "Let me in." Then a final hit. One strong enough to buckle the metal inward. We all flinched, but just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. No voice, no footsteps, nothing. Just a storm. The driver stayed braced against the door for another full minute before whispering, "I think he's gone." But my chest tightened as I stepped toward the window again, because deep in the swirling rain, barely visible through the storm, I saw movement. Not walking, not approaching, just standing, farther away now, up the road, facing us, watching, waiting, for what I had no idea. But something told me the night wasn't over. The men stood in the storm for a long moment, just a dark silhouette against the white blur of rain. He didn't come closer. He didn't shout again. He just watched. Then another lightning strike hit the hillside, blindingly bright. When the world returned to normal, he was gone. The driver exhaled shakily. "We wait for morning," he said. "Nobody opens door until then." And we didn't. We spent the night awake, huddled near the back wall, listening to the storm batter the shelter. The girl finally fell asleep. Walter snored softly. The lights flickered again and again but somehow stayed on. At some point, the driver sat next to me and whispered, "That man, he is not dangerous. He is sick." I turned to him. "Sick? What do you mean?" He hesitated. "People in these hills, some live alone. Storms, cold, hunger, they break the mind. Border Patrol knows him. He wanders. Sometimes he frightens travelers, but he doesn't hurt them." The explanation settled over me like warm air after hours of cold. I nodded slowly. Suddenly everything made sense. His silence, his staring, the strange calm in his voice. He wasn't hunting us. He was lost, just like we were. Morning came quietly. The storm was gone, leaving behind fallen branches, soaked earth, and a silence that felt almost unreal after the night we had survived. When the driver finally opened the shelter door, sunlight spilled in. The hillside was empty. Whoever the man was, he had disappeared with the storm. Border Patrol arrived an hour later, clearing the road and checking on us one by one. The guards weren't surprised when we mentioned the man. "He lives in the forest," one of them said. "Sometimes he walks the border road when he's scared. Storms, especially big ones, bring him out," the French guy whispered. "So he wasn't trying to hurt us?" The guard shook his head. "No, he probably thought you were shelter." Relief washed across the whole group. We boarded a replacement bus, exhausted but safe. As we drove down the repaired road, I looked out the window one last time, half expecting to see him standing between the trees. But there was only morning light, steaming off the wet forest. Later, when we finally crossed the border, I thought about how easily the story could have gone differently, how fear, darkness, and a storm can turn any human shape into a monster. But the truth was simpler, and sadder, and more human. We weren't hiding from a threat. We were sharing a mountain with someone who had no home, no shelter, no place to go when the storm came. A man seeking the same thing we were, a dry room, a bit of light, a door that might open. I learned that night that fear can make shadows bigger than they are. Storms distort everything: our vision, our judgment, our sense of safety. But when the sky clears, the truth usually looks different. And sometimes the person who terrifies you in the dark is just another traveler fighting the same storm.